Thank you for viewing this recording of a free event provided by Next Village San Francisco for our community. Next Village San Francisco is a local nonprofit providing services and support that empower seniors to live independently in their own homes. We welcome people who want to keep connected with their community as members, volunteers, and supporters. We host 30 to 40 free activities and events each month for the public, and our members have access to our network of volunteers. Learn more and get involved at nextvillagesf.org. We hope you enjoy this video.
Few Americans know about or understand the nature of our work, what I did, and particularly where I did it. Hearing that I lived in former communist countries or worked in Mongolia, Papua New Guinea, or Bangladesh led many of my family members and friends to think I must be in the CIA. Why else would I work in such countries? Why? Because in 1989, I watched with fascination the dismantling of the Berlin Wall. Never in my lifetime, and I'm sure many of yours, did I think I would witness the demise of communism. How could societies reared with a belief in Marxist ideology shove one political system aside for the emergence of another one at full speed? How could millions of people accustomed to state subsidies, state guarantees of housing, food, employment, medical care, even vacations, suddenly assume the burdens of freedom, taking responsibility for their lives? At the same time, I had these recurring questions. The American Bar Association created a program, ABA-CELI, Central European and Eurasian Law Initiative, that allowed American attorneys to volunteer. Yes, we volunteered our time to work in former communist countries. I wanted to be where the political action was. So I agreed to volunteer for ABA-CELI for 6 months. I moved to Bulgaria in 1993. And because of the unique and exciting work I was engaged in, I unexpectedly found my passion just a few months after being there. I could barely sleep. I was so excited to work. I extended my 6-month commitment to 1 year in Bulgaria, then spent the next 4 years working pro bono, living 1 year each in Latvia and Slovakia, and a total of 2 years in Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Croatia. I just couldn't get enough of this exciting work. Later, I lived 2 years in Afghanistan during the war. And when I wasn't living abroad, I was home-based in San Francisco, working as a consultant in over 30 countries, located in other regions, Asia, North Africa, and the Middle East. Most of my work, except for my Afghanistan work, where I was a justice advisor at the US Embassy, was funded by and directed by USAID. Now, sadly, as you know, just 2 months ago, USAID was dismantled. My work came to a screeching halt, as it did with thousands of other workers, US-based and foreign workers around the world. These foreign workers did most of the in-country work on behalf of USAID for the benefit of their country. USAID projects were abruptly stopped. USAID employees and contractors were either placed on administrative leave or were furloughed, and all their offices were shuttered. Since 1961, 60 years ago, USAID has led humanitarian and development efforts around the world to save lives and enhance the quality of life for millions of people abroad. USAID's humanitarian programs focus primarily on healthcare, combating the spread of disease, addressing food insecurity, and alleviating poverty. Its development efforts included education, environmental protection, enhancing economic growth, and promoting democratic reform, which is what I focused on. USAID's assistance over the past 6 decades not only enhanced the quality of life for foreigners, but it also successfully addressed the national security issues of the United States. I'm going to repeat that because this is extremely important today. The national security issues of the United States. USAID's presence around the world helped to thwart other countries, such as Russia and China, from encroaching in regions like the Middle East, Africa, or Asia to exert their influence. It's USAID, not our military, that often stabilize countries, the situations in countries, because of the influence USAID could exert as a result of the beneficial services it had provided to the country. Even though USAID's collaborative assistance is viewed as soft power, in contrast to the military engagement with boots on the ground as hard power, both are indispensable for the benefit of the United States and the world. Now, while we Americans who worked with USAID offered advice and guidance and provided financial support, it was the local citizens who carried out the work. Our collaboration with local staff and our counterparts, and for me, they were judges, lawyers, and law professors, law students as well, was essential in order to provide the necessary services that citizens in each country wanted. USAID also became a training ground for those with whom we worked closely. We Americans helped them, often by example, to develop their skills and enhance their productivity. And they became very pro-American. Many highly proactive local citizens who worked with us were offered opportunities by USAID to visit the United States, to learn more about how their craft is conducted in the United States. Numerous judges, lawyers, and law professors with whom I worked had such opportunities. In fact, 4 women judges with whom I worked very closely in Bulgaria were invited by Justice Sandra Day O'Connor to visit her at her Supreme Court chambers. Many of these foreigners who visited the United States have gone on to leadership positions in their country, which was the purpose of the USAID visitor program. In Slovakia, my legal assistant, a law school graduate at the time, became Minister of Justice. One of the 4 Bulgarian women judges also became Minister of Justice, and another one became a member of the European Parliament. With the closure of USAID, it's not just the American staff, but more importantly, the local staff that abruptly has no work, no income, and their bills are mounting up. Millions of recipients of USAID's humanitarian assistance are not receiving their necessary care, and the beneficiaries of USAID's development assistance are left stranded. America, by USAID's absence in these countries, has just ceded influence and power to the Chinese, Russians, and others. From my personal perspective, it's a tragedy. Today, USAID's website no longer exists. There is no longer any record of USAID's 60 years of work. Its history has been wiped clean. That is why I must use my website as the visual description of the rule of law work that I and other American attorneys conducted around the world on behalf of USAID. Now, these days, everyone hears the phrase rule of law, but few truly understand it, even some politicians and pundits who frequently use the term. It's necessary to understand what rule of law means, particularly today in the United States. According to the American Bar Association, the rule of law is a set of principles for ensuring an orderly and just society where no one is above the law. Everyone is treated equally under the law, and everyone is held accountable to the same laws. There are clear and fair processes for enforcing laws. There is an independent judiciary, and human rights are guaranteed for all. This definition is what we attorneys based our work on in developing the rule of law in former communist countries. Now, following the demise of communism in 1989, 15 republics of the former Soviet Union, now Russia was just one of the 15 republics. Very quickly, the others are Ukraine, Moldova, Belarus, the Baltics, that's Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, the Caucasus, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, the stands, as we fondly call them, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, 6 republics of former Yugoslavia, that's Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Macedonia, Montenegro, 6 Central European countries, Bulgaria, Romania, Poland, Hungary, Albania, and East Germany, and 2 new countries that were once part of Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic and Slovakia. All had to undergo massive legal reform. That's 29 countries during the same period that had to drastically change their legal system. In all of these countries, new constitutions had to be written embracing democratic values. Laws that formerly gave power to the state had to be sacked and replaced by new laws, legalizing private commerce and market-based economy. And that's when ABA Sealy stepped in and provided the pro bono services of American attorneys to help these countries in their legal reform process. The 3 pillars of rule of law reform that we focused on were judicial independence, bar reform, and legal education reform. Justice O'Connor, who was on the executive board of ABA Sealy, instructed us, as only she could do as a Supreme Court justice, to be so effective at our jobs that we work ourselves out of a job. It's propitious that I decided recently to create a personal retrospective of my international work, knowing that it was during a period of time that was unique, living in former communist countries while they were transitioning to democracies. In the early 90s, I was straddling 2 vastly different political and economic lifestyles. I went from my Russian Hill apartment where I am now with my living a privileged lifestyle, like most of you are doing, to going to Bulgaria and countries thereafter, standing in bread lines, buying only 2 types of cheese, suffering the freezing cold during winter because the central heating was turned off throughout the city. Once the city turned on the heat, it was kept on 24 hours a day throughout winter and spring. The only way I could regulate the heat in my apartment was to open the windows, even during snowstorms. In Latvia, the water was turned off for 2 weeks to clean the pipes during winter, of all times. Each morning, I had to heat 2 pans of water for my sponge bath, and afterwards stand in a long line in the snow, waiting for the city garbage truck to come by so that I could put my garbage in back of the truck. In Ukraine, the hair salons had huge bins where we had to wash our own hair before they would cut it. Now, this may sound intolerable to you, but I knew these were historical moments, and I was euphoric living during these times. While my website is a retrospective of my rule of law work, it has inadvertently become a historical treatment to the rule of law work around the world that USAID funded for decades, since there is no longer a USAID website. Now, I'm going to pause here and take some questions. And after about 10 minutes or so, or whenever we're finished with a bulk of questions, then I'm going to screen share my website and give you an overview of the rule of law work that USAID funded. Now we're going to get to the fun part, because these are pages of my website that really, as you can see, it's the first one's a bit about me, the rule of law projects, countries, presentations and publications, Well, we're going to go back. And this is the work, the rule of law work that I did on behalf of USAID in 40 countries, but also it's the work that would have been on USAID's website. Because every time we went to a country for USAID, any project we had to write a report. Those reports are public documents. So everything I did for 30 years with USAID was recorded and publicized on USAID's website. Not directly, you had to go to different websites, you had links to them, but all the work I did and thousands of other people. So you could document USAID's work and its success or failures, if there were, by just going on its website. And now it's just what I have to say and what thousands of other employees have to say. And I do hope that someday that website is resurrected. Before I get specifically to these 4 pages, I would just like to explain to you a bit, an overview of the work that we did, we ABA Seeley lawyers. As for the judicial reform work, unlike in the United States, where highly experienced lawyers become judges, most judges in European countries are assigned to the bench right after law school. I witnessed young judges in their mid-20s presiding over cases in which the prosecutors and defense attorneys were twice, even 3 times their age and considerably more experienced. Between law school and the bench, Western European countries have judicial training schools or centers for law school graduates who want to become a judge or prosecutor. These schools did not exist in former communist countries. So ABA Seeley, in collaboration with other international assistance providers, helped to create judicial training centers in numerous former communist countries. All throughout those 29 countries I mentioned, we helped to create judicial training centers so new judges, after communism and the beginning of democracy, new judges could really learn about democratic reforms, and all judges could learn about the new laws that were procreated right after the end of communism. The ones that I'm most proud of, I worked on several, but the ones I'm most proud of is the one in Bulgaria and the one in Latvia. Now, ABA Seeley's focus was not just on developing the skills of judges and their knowledge of the law. It was also, and it still is, an opportunity to re-educate them so that they would radically change their behavior and assert their independence. Under communism, the state and the party were supreme. There was no rule of law. Judges were accustomed to what is commonly referred to as telephone justice, succumbing to the directives of influential Communist Party leaders who would call them and inform them of the decision they should render in important cases. As for attorneys, before communism, bar associations played a crucial role in upholding judicial independence by defending the rule of law, challenging unconstitutional laws, and ensuring a fair and impartial justice system. Under communism, bar associations were banned and lawyers worked under the thumb of the government. ABA Seeley helped to change all that. We worked closely with attorneys to establish bar associations and to provide training to attorneys not only on new laws, but also how to develop a private law practice. They had absolutely no experience. Now, when I was working in Bulgaria, a female attorney who became a very good friend of mine, Pavlina Todorova, and I hope she's on today, she had created a robust law practice. And before I left Bulgaria, she said to me, Mary Noel, under communism, we had lots of free time to go shopping, but there was nothing to buy. As democratic and economic reforms emerged in Bulgaria, grocery and clothing stores were flourishing, but we were so overworked, we had no time to go shopping. Now, I'm about to show you these 4 pages, and this first one is, of course, a bit about my background, but that's not really why I'm showing it. If any of you are more interested in the early days of ABA Seeley's work, this is a video of a speech I gave to the American Bar Association in San Francisco when it's had its annual meeting here in 1995. And it's all about the early days of ABA Seeley's work. This is very interesting in terms, if you're interested in how civilians assistance providers worked in Afghanistan along with the military to help develop the rule of law, because the military also played a big role in it. And here is an interview by the Legal Times that I gave inside my shipping container. That's where I lived for 2 years, this shipping container. And what's so interesting, not only hopefully what I say, but also where I said this, because part of this video will show the whole interior of my shipping container. And you will see members of my family photos of them, because I really wanted to make my shipping container in Kabul a little piece of home. Here is a pictorial account of my life and work in Afghanistan as a civilian assistance provider. I wrote it and there's photos. And by clicking here, you can go on that. The reason I'm not talking about it is because I have already given a presentation on Afghanistan, but it is unusual to see how an assistant, a civilian assistance provider worked in Afghanistan. This is the Rule of Law projects, and this is the key page of my website. I mentioned the big areas that we worked on: judicial reform and bar reform, legal reform. On the left side, you will see the specific projects I worked on. For instance, rule of law assessments and evaluations. There are numerous projects if you go down this list. I'm showing this to you just in case you are more interested than what I'm saying today. But once you click on a major area like rule of law assessments and evaluations, the arrow down will indicate all the countries I did that work: Algeria, Bangladesh, Bulgaria, Georgia, Jordan, Kosovo, Lebanon, and so on. And so every project, large project, category of project, where they all are here, you can see not only what I did, and what I did is what all ABA Seeley lawyers did in developing the rule of law. What I did and where I did it. Now, these are the photos. I'm going to go through this page somewhat slowly to show you these photos, because these photos really visually describe what we did in these countries. Now, I think if you read who's there, and you can see it's Chief Justice Rehnquist in Bulgaria, in Varna, Bulgaria. And it's unbelievable that Chief Justice Rehnquist showed up in Bulgaria for this reason. And I'll explain the story behind this, because Dushana Zadravkova, who is on, is one of the main reasons that we were in Varna, Bulgaria. And that is, when I first got to Bulgaria, I did meet these 4 women judges whom I discussed before, and we all wanted to collectively create the first judicial training center in Bulgaria. And after months of working together, and there was a tremendous amount of hard work to write all the documents, to write the curriculum, to find the building, to indicate who the students should be, lawyers, judges. And while it's called Judicial Training Center in European countries, prosecutors are treated in the same kind of category as judges, although judges are a little higher in the rank, but they're often trained together. After we had done all that groundwork, I learned from the Chief Justice of the Bulgarian Supreme Court that Chief Justice Rehnquist was coming to Bulgaria. And I thought, oh, well, then I think Chief Justice Rehnquist could give the welcoming speech to the opening of this judicial training center. So I went to Ambassador Montgomery's office. He was our ambassador at the time, and we worked closely together. USAID and the US Embassy worked very closely together. And I told him I thought it would be nice if we could invite Chief Justice Rehnquist to come to Varna and give the opening speech. And of course, Ambassador Montgomery looked at me, raised his eyes, and said, "You'll never be able to do that." And I looked at him and I said, "Yes, I will." And I went back to ABA Sealy. ABA Sealy liked the idea. ABA Sealy talked to the State Department in DC. The State Department talked to the Supreme Court. And look what happened. Here he is, Chief Justice Rehnquist, which just gave us such joy, as well as the Bulgarian judges and lawyers. Just so pleased to see the highest level judge in the United States of America come all the way to Bulgaria. And I knew he would accept that offer if he were invited. And the reason why, because at that time, particularly in the early 90s, all of us lawyers and judges wanted to help create democracy in these countries, former communist countries. So everyone was eager to help. And it didn't matter that he was at the top of the legal food chain. And these, by the way, are other ABA Sealy lawyers. We were all more or less close to the bottom. We're just lawyers practicing laws in the US, and he's at the top. Here, we are together. We are equal. It didn't matter what our title was. We all had the same dedication to helping develop the rule of law in former communist countries. Also, this photo really describes why I, who was making a lot of money in San Francisco as a land use attorney just 8 months before this, and now in Bulgaria making no money, and why I extended that for 5 years, was because I realized in Bulgaria, it didn't matter how much money I had. It mattered the difference I was making. And every day I felt like I was making a difference in the lives of these people. And here is the other photo I'd like you to see, because here is Inga. She's on the call today. Inga, the Chief Justice of the Latvian Supreme Court, the president of the Judges Association, and I, the four of us, helped to create the Judicial Training Center in Latvia. And as I mentioned, it's the local staff that did, and our counterparts who did a lot of work. Well, in this case, Inga not only did the work, but it seemed like our roles should have been reversed, because I'd periodically call Inga in the morning very early, because I rarely slept. I worked all the time. I'd call her and say, Inga, I think we should do this today and this today to help create the Latvian Judicial Training Center. Well, Inga always responded, well, Mary Noel, I've already done that. I'd already thought of that. I did that. And so actually, after spending the year there, I'm thinking she should have been the ABA Sealy lawyer, because she was always a step ahead of me. It was so much fun to work with you, Inga, and I hope you're still on. The rest of the photos, I do have some comments about these photos, but please take a look at all the different people I'm working with. That's Nepal. This is Mongolia. Here's all the judges of former Yugoslavia. You know, this is Slovenia. This is Croatia, Macedonia. Here, judges in Kyrgyzstan. These are the Constitutional Court of Kyrgyzstan. And USAID really supported the enhancement of women and judges and women lawyers. And so these are Egyptian judges I worked with. And here are judges in Bangladesh, women judges in Bangladesh. And of course, you see Justice O'Connor in the center, and it's because she was on the executive board of Sealy. When I worked in Afghanistan, Nancy Pelosi came. She was Speaker of the House at the time, and we were attending a rule of law conference. Now, this is one picture I really wanted to emphasize, because you may not be able to tell, but these are Palestinians in the West Bank. And if you can't tell by how they look, you can certainly see up here is Arafat. Well, we were working on legal education and spent a lot of time on that. And at this meeting and other meetings, of course, when I'm not with these people working or others, I'm working out of an office, and in that office were 3 female Palestinian lawyers. And one day we decided to go out to lunch. It was a late lunch, around 3 o'clock. One of the women jumped up after looking at her watch and said, I've got to go. I've got to take my daughter to ballet class. Ballet class, I'm thinking. The other 2 women jump up and join her. And at the time I was in the West Bank, all I knew about the West Bank before I arrived was Intifada. That's all I knew. That's all I read about in the newspapers. Intifada, Intifada. That's all we covered. Intifada. I'm there and I'm learning that, huh? I mean, you're going to ballet school in the West Bank? Then later, one of these men asked me a week later if I'd join his daughter because she has a Sweet 16 party. And I feel like I'm back home in America, the ballet and Sweet 16. And what I learned in the West Bank, but although I knew this from many countries, is what we know in the US and what other countries know about us is primarily what's in the newspaper, what's in the news. They're not going to write news about ballet school in the West Bank or ballet school in any other country. It's the sensational news, true news, but it's the one that captures attention. So that's all I knew about the people in the Palestinians in the West Bank is Intifada. But there's so much more here and in every country where I worked. I really learned about the lifestyles of the people in all the countries where I worked. Here, Lebanon, if you can see, Slovakia, again, Mongolia. This is one I wanted to highlight because every conference we had this banner, every conference. You cannot read it, I'm sure, under what USAID, but it says USAID, not from the American government, from the American people. So everyone in the countries where we worked knew it was the Americans who were there helping them. And that was had a big influence on their lives, that American citizens were out there helping them. Here's Bangladesh, Kosovo, Russia, where I loved working. This is just right after Putin came to power. And these attorneys, as well as judges I worked with in Russia, were so proactive. They were so eager to implement democratic reforms. They learned very quickly. And we worked very well together. I have really personally suffered over all these attorneys and judges and many other Russians who may not agree with the government and want so much to pursue democratic reforms as they did so well after the fall of communism until around 2012, when all foreign nonprofit organizations were asked to leave the country. I love being with the kids, the children, whenever I could be. Sorry. But I like this photo because I'm in Bangladesh. I'm to conduct the workshop on democracy at a high school. But I didn't get to conduct the workshop because the high school students, and she's one of them with her piece of paper, got up on the stage and they told me what democracy meant to them and what they were doing about implementing it in Bangladesh. The last photo is this one, because this photo consists of the 4 women Bulgarian judges with whom, and this is in 1993, 1994, 30 years ago, with whom I worked to create the first judicial training center. That's Dushana Zadravkova, my arrow is on her, behind her, and she was the one that member of European Parliament. Miglena Tacheva, she was the former Minister of Justice, now is head of the National Institute of Justice. Nelly Kutskova, who was very senior judge, has been in Bulgaria, and Kapka Kostova, who ended up on the Constitutional Court of Bulgaria. This countries page is really very similar to the Rule of Law Projects page in terms of content, because you'll see here, it says click to the left, click a country below for details. What this is, you can click on any country and see the rule of law projects that were listed in the previous page. Those rule of law projects, which country I did those rule of law projects. So it's just the same information. One is by the project, then you see the countries. One is by the country, and then you see the projects. There's only 2 photos, which I want to show you, and you could go on this page later and take a look at all the photos, because these are photos about the countries, not necessarily the people, as I did in the first page. These are the two photos I would like you to see. If any of you do look at that video of my interview in the shipping container, this is the outside of our shipping containers. This one on the left, where it's during winter, one on the right, where it's during spring. The photograph is the same from the same perspective. You'll see on the left, all the sandbags. And of course, the right, the sandbags. And you see all these sunflowers. Well, they weren't planted. They weren't planted. What happened here is that my sister sent me a bird feeder. And along with the bird feeder, she sent bird food. So bird seed. So I put the bird seed in the bird feeder, and you can't see it, but it's way up here. And it was filled with bird seed for weeks. Well, birds were flying all around us, but no one came to to feed off of this. I don't understand it. So what I did, and we do go a little bit crazy when you're living in a fortified compound for almost 2 years, I put all the bird seed on this walkway. And this, by the way, we had 400 shipping containers in this area where I live. So we're a lot of walkways. So I had a lot of walkways where I put the bird seed on the walkway, because I figured, well, maybe the birds who are flying above us will come down and have that bird seed. And then I'll be so happy to hear the little chirp, chirp, chirps. Well, the bird seed stayed on the ground. No bird came. I couldn't believe it. And then one day, or maybe a week or so, all the wind, there was just huge windstorm. All that bird seed that was in the center was blown to the side, where there's a little bit of dirt in front of the sandbags. Rain came, sunflowers germinated. And we had sunflowers all over this area we called Hoochville, because these shipping containers were named hooches. So we had sunflowers lining a lot of these areas. And these sunflowers went up to probably 2 feet. And that was, so it's called Sunflower Alley in Afghanistan. And the last page I'd like to present is very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, is the presentations and publications. AID did none of its work by itself. It was always coordinating its work and collaborating its work with other foreign assistance providers. And because I was a longtime ABA CLE volunteer, I often was asked to give many presentations around that European area. And because of that, I was able to meet a lot of international assistance providers from England, from Canada, France, the Dutch, the Netherlands, the Dutch, the Germans, the Italians. And that's one thing that made this work so engaging, because so many of us had the same goal. We came from different countries, but we had the same goal.
Any other questions people have? And I know we are at time, so I appreciate you all, your patience with the technology. And Mary Noel, oh my God, thank you. Any other final questions? And Janet.
I just want to thank you, Mary Noel. That is the most eloquent description of what is lost by Trump's effort to shut down USAID. It's a whole nother perspective on the damage that's done to soft power and America's reputation abroad. It's just a total tragedy. And thank you very much for that presentation.
Well, you're welcome. I was pleased to give it. But I have a closing if I...
Yep. Please go right ahead, and then we will do our muted round of applause. So Mary Noel, please.
So this is from the bottom of my heart as I speak. But the photos I showed you today with the personal stories of my work fill me with immense joy and satisfaction, and the pride I have to all of these lawyers and judges I worked with around the world, like the judges and lawyers who are on this website from Bulgaria and Latvia, on how much we achieved for the benefit of democracy in their countries. But as I speak, I'm deeply saddened that USAID is no longer. USAID enhanced the quality of lives of millions of people around the world. USAID gave these people the opportunity to learn about, to meet, to become colleagues and friends with Americans who deeply cared about them. USAID also had a profound impact on my life. One of the greatest benefits I received from my work with USAID is that I was exposed to the world. I learned that no matter how different we are from one another, the way we look, the language we speak, the food we eat, the clothes we wear, the music we listen to, the deities we worship or not, the political systems in which we live, we are all the same.
Thank you for viewing this Next Village video recording. We hope you enjoyed it. Please help us spread the word and tell friends and neighbors about Next Village events and services for seniors and adults with disabilities in San Francisco. Visit our website to learn more about our vibrant, growing network, as well as to view our calendar of upcoming Zoom and in-person events and activities in San Francisco. Our website is nextvillagesf.org. Contact us to join our email list to learn about events and resources for seniors in San Francisco. And subscribe to the Next Village YouTube channel by clicking the button below.